Sorry, mate. I got your chair back on the mark. Is that about right?
Yeah, that looks about right.
Okay. It's the first time I sat down all day, you know. Right, let's go.
My name's Ed, and I'm the technical director for Yeti Tool. That means I set the technical strategy and I make sure it happens. And, you know, other businessy stuff. But I'm mostly here for the engineering. I love that bit. We make a CNC machine called SmartBench, and we suddenly realized in October last year that we were about to make our 1,000th unit. So of course, you know, we thought, well, we'll have to have a party. We all eat lunch together. Call it lunch club actually, and we just come out with the idea of the party and we started planning. We started imagining what we wanted at this party, and then I don't know how it came about, but all of a sudden we were talking about building this massive robot. Then of course the laser's got to go on top of it, and there's the DJ, so you need 2 robots now because you need one on the left, one on the right, and it just started getting out of hand really. I remember thinking at that moment, we've had such a mission, everybody has, you know, getting through these last few years in the climate of everything that's going on. We need to have a bit of fun. The biggest problem was that if I got this design wrong, there was a very real possibility that a big old robot was going to fall on one of my mates' heads. That was one problem. Second was, we only had a week to get it all done in and make them. We wanted 2 of them. It was huge. I mean, it was cool, but it did turn out to be one of the most stressful projects I've ever done with this company.
And was it fun?
No, it wasn't fun at all. It was a really terrible idea.
If you're ever going to have a big party and you get that urge to build a robot before it, just don't bother. Yeah. Don't bother.
So a key design principle is I want to make everything on SmartBench. You know, CNC routed on our own machine. SmartBench can cut up to 2.5 meters long. So I'm thinking if we have 2 arms, then that could reach 4 meters. Now, if it can reach 4 meters, it can reach the tiles on the roof of my house. I'd be well happy with that. I think the reason that you don't see robots a lot this big is because the bigger they get, the more expensive they get, and they get expensive really quickly. If you see the robots in a car factory, it's because they've got all these motors distributed around the arm. That makes them really heavy, so then they've got to use strong metal alloys to be able to support the load, and then that gets heavier, and it just gets out of control. It gets expensive really, really quickly. So my job as the designer is I've got to deliver this and balance everything, but try and keep it as cheap as possible. It's a robot for a party at the end of the day, so the budget's not massive here. To be honest, at this point, I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to do the mechanics at this stage. And then it hits me. I just see the angle poise lamp on my desk, and I think, yeah, I'll just rip that off. The angle poise lamp is quite clever. It was developed by George Carwardine. I think that's how you say his name, but it was in the 30s. He was a Brit. He developed it in Bath. Effectively, it's very efficient because it puts, instead of having all these actuators off on the arm, it puts all of them down at the base, all the springs right at the bottom. And that's good because now they're not on the levers, which keeps all the weight down. So all we have to do is swap out the springs for motors, that'll move it up and down, put it on a big bearing so the whole thing can spin around, and make it 10 times bigger. Easy. It's so not easy. Back to the design. When I'm designing, I've got these basic principles in mind. The whole structure, I want to make it out of poplar ply. It's available in large sheet format and it's very light. The only downer is it's weak. You can snap that off easy. So I have no idea whether it is actually going to collapse or not until I actually do the design. We'll see, I guess. For the design itself, we've got 4 axes. The one at the bottom is spinning the whole robot around. Then you've got another axis which is lifting the lower arm up. And then you've got a third axis lifting the upper arm up. And finally, you've got one at the top which is spinning the laser around, and that counteracts the slew bearing at the bottom, so the laser's always pointing at the crowd. When I'm designing stuff, and it must be the same for everybody, but I just have this fear of it breaking all the time. And the biggest weak point for me is the pivots. So you've got all the weight of the arms and they're trying to shear through the wood. And I don't know how to cope with it because you've got the poplar ply, which is weak. So what I go for is some large bearings, which are massively overrated. They take M12 bolts, but the point is, they distribute the load, they help distribute the load because they've got really fat outer races. And you know, I think that's gonna work. To drive the two lifting axes, I actually find these lead screws on eBay, and they're ½ meter long. They've got ball units on them and the tail bearings, and they're only 14 quid. Well happy with that. And they'll massively gear down everything. So the motors are gonna easily be able to lift that load. The only downer is I'm gonna have to design some quite trick gimbals so that the lead screws can rotate and adjust. But you know, I'll just stick some techno on, have a late night, zoning out to CAD. You know, it's a pretty good night in. On the end of the lead screws, we've got motors, but how big do those motors need to be to actually lift it up? I really want to use some NEMA 23s on the production line. We've got loads of them, but are they going to be enough?
I don't actually believe the data sheets on how powerful the motors are going to be when they're put in conjunction with the ball screws. And what I don't want to happen is we put this thing together and then the whole robot just doesn't move. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a load test rig. We're going to put our motor together with our ball screw, and we're going to see how many kilos it can lift.
We coupled the motor to the lead screw, and on the lead screw you've got the ball nut, and then we tied a bag to the ball nut, and then we wound the lead screw, and that lifted the ball nut and the bag. We kept on adding weight into the bag until it stalled out, and when it stalled out we knew that was it. That was how much weight it could lift. We tested the NEMA 23s. They actually did really well, 40, 50 kilos, something like that. But I did the calcs on how much we would actually need, and it came back at about 80 kilos. So we then had to invest in the next size up motor, you know, NEMA 34s, like proper chunky motors, you know, you could move anything with these things. We plugged them into the test rig, and we just kept on adding weight. It cleaned 100 kilos easily, and then the bag broke.
Is the bag breaking?
I've got no idea.
Some of it broke.
So we had a lot of confidence in these things, they were going to do it. Anyway, that's testing. We don't have to talk about testing. Let's get to the design. The first part of the design challenge was actually the turntable. And that's got to do two things. It's got to let the whole robot spin, and it's got to not let the robot tip over, because nobody wants a 4-meter robot falling on the head, you know. The whole turntable's so big, the whole thing's just floating, which is why it can just completely tip up and over. And as that lever, the arm, extends away from the middle, that's what's tipping it over. So I need to bring the center of gravity back into the middle of the base. So because I really want to get this right, I give my mate AK a ring. He actually designs nuclear cranes for a living. So, you know, can't go wrong there. He says that actually that's pretty common in cranes. In fact, they're mostly on floating slew bearings, and he says that industry standard is to get that center of gravity to within 1/3 of the bearing's radius. So we can do that with counterweight, and in our case, that's bricks. So now we've solved that problem, it's time to make the turntable do what it was supposed to do, you know, turn. So it's back to eBay, and I start looking around for anything that I can use for the top turntable to roll on. I find that precision bearings are hideously expensive, but I see along the way catapult ammunition, which I suspect is exactly the same thing, but just rejects from the production line. And I got like 1,000 of these just to see if they would work. They're cheap, you know, why not?
Look, I don't really mind if they're off nominal at all. And if you look at that, it's way off 10. I suppose it's supposed to be 10. But if you look at all of them, they're all the same. Look at that, 9.5 pretty much on the money. That's fine, as long as they're consistent. Ben, do you want to make a robot, mate?
Let's go!
So now I've got the balls, I want to cut some tracks into some acrylic. Now I've got the tracks, then I can put the balls in the tracks, and then I put the turntable on top of the balls, and now it can spin on the balls. So it takes all the weight, spins around, it's cheap, done.
A 12-hour day at Slew Bearing works, and I am so happy right now. Yeah, come on!
Every project has a pain in the ass moment. It turned out that the balls were a real pain. Halfway through testing, we noticed that a ball had jumped out of the track and was now sandwiched in, between the plates. And that meant that the whole weight of the turntable and the mass of bricks was now bearing down on that one ball. That meant that the whole thing could seize, and just that single ball could tear everything off.
So you can skip this bit.
We rebuilt it. I don't know what it was, whether it was the dust kicking the balls out of the track, the mediumly violent assembly of us putting it together, I don't know, but we did it a few times and it just kept on popping out. And then the final nail in the coffin for me was I realized that actually, we've got to move these robots from where we were building them to the dance floor, and there's just no way they would have stayed in the track. So after all of that, it took a while, but I had to accept defeat on that and completely rip it up and start again. Luckily at this point, Martin has a great idea, which is we use bearings instead of balls. Throw the balls away, just use bearings. And we have an intermediary plate which holds onto the bearings. We call it a spider, and that, as that rotates, it holds the bearings in place, which should work. So take two.
Right, so they've come off lovely, and now I'm just going to test them. Yes, look at that, that's nice. We should just be able to pop this over on the top. Yeah, that's going to work. All right, turntable next, please. Yep, it's going to do it.
So now that's done, we can get onto the arm, the robot looking bit. At this stage, it's all about making the bits as fast as we can, because we've just spent a lot of time on slew bearing. We don't have much time. We're starting to feel the pressure.
We need to be cutting all the time, but we're not going to make it.
And I know I'm going to say this, obviously, Yeti tool and everything, but SmartBench at this point was amazing because it just churned the parts out. I mean, we literally could not keep up. And the bit that I loved, I was designing, I was able to take the file, and Smart Transfer for me was just made it, because the workflow was, I'd finish design, I'd drag it onto Smart Transfer. It would get pinged over the Wi-Fi to the SmartBench. As was at the SmartBench, just cranking the parts out, I'm just Wi-Fiing the bits. And I'm using Smart Manager, so he knows the quantities, he knows the tooling, it's all there. I don't even have to talk to him. Meanwhile, he's doing that, and the bits are just coming in to build bay, and the guys, just can't keep up. We've got Rami, Benj, Dragos, Barry, Finn, Loz, all scrambling. Did I say Dragos? All scrambling to get all of the sub-assemblies done. Everybody's pushing really, really hard, all day, all night, just trying to get these things together. It's building, it's coming together, and then we just suddenly see this robot arm emerge, which we've all been having in our heads for days. And then I hear this crack. It was one of my worst fears in the design. I didn't know whether the poplar was going to take it. I knew it was weak. I guess I thought, well, we'll find out. But yeah, that noise of hearing the plywood starting to come apart, it was brutal, man. And we had to stop. We had to strip it down and work out what had gone wrong. I know where to look, and sure enough, it's coming apart at the elbows tendon. There's a lot of force in that area. So basically, we've got a long arm, which is, adds a lot of load on, and a very short part of the lever, which means that you've got to have even more force coming through to pull that up. And to make matters worse, the tendon's at an angle. So that force, which pulls on it, just gets more and more. Worst case, we're looking about 80, 90 kilos, and the poplar just wasn't up for it. So we have to reinforce fast. I get to designing another couple of extra plates to reinforce it, and this time I'm using birch ply, which is much stronger than poplar. It's a lot heavier, but it's worth the weight. We glue these new reinforcing plates back in, and then we rebuild the whole robot again. We lost a lot of time.
No, there is no way we're going to get this done. Absolutely no way at all.
Starting to get unbelievably tired. Unbelievably tired.
So we're running out of time. It's midnight now on one of the last nights. I guess in every project there's always a bit of a low. We'd just been running, exhausted. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor, realizing that we had a whole other robot to make, and I got this feeling that I was just pushing us all over the edge of a cliff. You know, how on earth were we going to build the second one? And I just said to everybody, look, you know, what do you want to do? Because I don't think we can make two. And everybody said, no, we're making two. I was so proud of everybody. So yeah, we just cracked on. And actually, you know, I'm so glad we did, because that second robot was easy. You know, we'd done all the problem solving with the first one, so we knew what we were doing. We didn't have any redesign. Did it in about half a day. Brilliant. So it's the day of the party now, and literally nothing else is done. Somehow we've got to move all the robots into position. And to be honest with you, I don't even really remember how that happened. It's a bit blurry. There was a lot of squeaking and dragging noises when we got there, I guess. I didn't think about it at all, actually, if I'm honest. That was lucky.
Right, well done, everyone. Let's do robot two.
That's then followed by, we've got to fit the laser to the head. That was pretty cool, actually. I was quite pleased with that. We used a rack and pinion system, which would allow us to be able to swivel the whole laser on the top of the robot. And then we put the signal cable all the way down the arm, through the dance floor, out to the back, up to a laptop. So we could control both the robot and the laser from one laptop at the back of the dance floor, which was great. That was like a dream. Now we can get these things moving and see what they can do. If they can do anything. So then Benji, actually we've not talked about Benji at all, have we? Right, so Benji is kind of like my partner in crime on this project, and he is in charge of all the motion control. You know, he's got to get this thing moving. You know, I thought the mechanics was hard, but actually getting it moving's tricky. But the poor guy, because we spent all the time on the mechanics, has had literally no time to actually do his job. We've got barely no time left, and this is his time to shine.
Oh my god, we have a solution.
Oh, what have we got?
I've got two Arduinos driving two motors at the same time from the same G-code command.
How did you do that?
Duplicating the COM ports.
Our control, by the way, for the geeks, is very similar to how we run SmartBench. Okay, so it's an Arduino running a more advanced version of Gerbil, and that is firing off all the steps to the stepper drivers, which moves the motors. We control the whole thing through a live USB connection. And to cut a long story short, okay, that means we can move all the axes together at the same time, just with a simple line of G-code. Bench does a cracking job at getting all of this together in next to no time. So thanks, Bench. Soz Bench. And then we switch it on. And for me and Bench, this is a really special moment. And I think when you do any project, you spend so long investing your imagination as to what it's going to look like. And until it's actually there, you don't know how it's going to feel, but you hope it's going to be good. And when these things start moving, they start moving at the same time in synchronization, and we're both just pumped because we're wired. This is everything that we'd imagined. And we've got two massive robots, 4 meters high, doing everything that we imagined they would do. And the sound they made was just, everything was there. It was a moment. It was a real moment. So happy. Yeah, speechless. But we've got to crack into testing quickly. Not much time left. So, I mean, testing's crude. I'm just there saying faster, 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 you know, make them move quicker. And every time we go a bit quicker, we run into a new problem like homing issues or step resolution, or there wasn't enough motor in the drivers, you know. They just kept on coming and we just kept on pushing it. And then all of a sudden, people started turning up for the party. And we were like, oh yeah, totally forgot about that. At that point, we'd done everything that we could, and we got the lasers on, we got all the sounds sorted out at the same time, and it was lights out, lasers on, good times. Looking back, this was an amazing project. I mean, it was super intense having the party deadline, and we had bitten off way more than we could chew, but it didn't matter. I mean, we had a vision as to what we wanted to do, and seeing the robots just casting that laser light out over the dance floor, I think we nailed it. To be honest, pulling it all off in the time that we had, that was half the achievement. It sounds cheesy, but there's no way we could have done it without a massive team effort from the whole of Yeti tool, that's per. And there was some amazing efforts. I mean, Martin, that's Lizzie's dad, he doesn't even work here, by the way, but he turned up for a week and just did carpentry. What a legend. And the party was good fun. I was pretty pleased with the design at the end of it. I think it was one of the coolest things that we've made in a while. And in fact, there was a real moment at the end when we had to break the party down. We had to pick them up and wheel the robots out and put them in a container and lock them up. And, you know, we were all a bit sad about that. Yeah, I genuinely missed them. They were part of all of us that night.